Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rico Borrego.
I am your other co-host, Tony Borrego.
And this is the podcast known as Relatively Sound, the podcast that puts the lime in the coconut. Now, today's episode is going to be another album appreciation episode. We did one sometime last year, I believe, for REM's Automatic for the People. And today we're back with another album that Tony and I just adore. Tony, why don't you tell the listeners what album we're talking about today?
We are talking about Harry Nilsson's Nilsson Schmilsson, the 1971 release, with him on the front cover in a bathrobe.
Yes, it is his. It was his seventh studio album, and it did feature a couple big hits. One of them being "Without You," which Tony, who originally did that song,
Originally written by Badfinger.
and then he also had
but greatly improved by Nilsson. I'll say that.
Yes, and then there were some other kind of not as popular singles, but "Jump Into the Fire," which I know was featured in Goodfellas, I guess, in a very prominent scene. I've never seen that movie, and then "Coconut," which later would be like known as "Lime in the Coconut," but it would be covered by other people. But yeah, let's just give a quick, brief kind of background on Harry Nilsson when it comes to our, background with him. Harry Nilsson is a singer-songwriter I was unaware of until this was many years ago, when our grandmother showed us, or not showed us, but she wanted me to watch a documentary about Harry Nilsson with her called "Who is Harry Nilsson and Why is Everybody Talking About Him?" And I had zero background on who he was.
And you were in like high school, right, at this point?
Yeah, this was a good bit back. And I never heard of him. And I watched a documentary with her, and I was like, when I found out that like he's the one that wrote "Coconut," "Lime in the Coconut," and he's the one that wrote "One," "One is the Loneliest Number," which would later be covered by Three Dog Night and become more popular. I was like, oh, wow, like this guy's actually written a lot of songs that maybe was made more famous by other people. And for whatever reason, after we listened to it, I think, or after we watched the documentary, she was like, let's go on Amazon and buy a couple of his albums. So one of the albums we bought was Nilsson Schmilsson. And then we also bought the third kind of album in the Schmilsson trilogy, which is called "A Little Touch of Schmilsson in the Night," which is just like a covers album where he's like doing a bunch of standard songs. And I remember first listening to Nilsson Schmilsson and being blown away. I was like, wow, like I've never heard of any of these songs except for like I technically "Lime the Coconut." And I was just like, wow, this guy is impressive. It was back when I was still like, didn't know a ton of, classic, rock bands or musicians. Like I was still, kind of, getting into a ton of other bands. So, but I will say he is someone that I think is super underrated. I think he should be talked about just as much as like the Beatles and Dylan. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But Tony, what was your first exposure to him?
Pretty much the same. I never watched the little documentary with you guys, but I do remember hearing the Schmilsson CD, with you guys. I think maybe in Lita's car or whatnot. That being said, I found that this album, like being younger and stuff, it was very easy to listen to. Like it's very likable. It's an easy album to love. And as I've grown older and I immerse myself with, more music, different styles, maybe more technical aspects of music, I can always come back to this album and still listen to it and still have the same kind of like that kind of magical, wonder feeling this album evokes. It's such a fun record, but when I say fun, it's fun, but it does not, it does not give up song quality just to be fun.
Yeah, I would say like I was trying to think like why is this album so good? And one of the reasons is I just think like even if he's covering a song, because there's 3 songs on this album that are covers. Um, Early in the Morning is a cover. Without You, obviously we mentioned is a cover, and then Let the Good Times Roll is also a cover. And even with the covers and with his original songs, he just like does something special with each one. There's such a variety in like sounds, but yet it sounds cohesive. Like it never does. There's never a moment that sounds like super out of left field where it's too jarring. But he does enough, production that he keeps it fresh. And it's just one of those albums. Like I kind of compare it to McCartney, the Paul
Debut
McCartney's solo
solo.
album, where it's like just like it has like singer songwriter, but it's not just like someone in acoustic guitar or someone in piano. Like it's got full instrumentation, but you could just tell the musician or the artist felt like they had a lot of creativity and freedom when making the album. So it never feels like stiff. It never feels like they're trying too hard.
There's a lot of creative, I was gonna say creative freedom, but there's just a lot of creative expression going on here. I agree with what you said. I like the mix between piano and guitar. And the arrangements of the songs are fantastic. And I mean, I think you really nailed it by saying that he does something special with each song. Um, I mean, that being said, let's just like do a quick dive in. What is like your favorite and least favorite track here? I want to see how we feel about this.
My favorite it's got to be "Jump Into the Fire." That song when I first heard it, I think that's. I mean, I loved everything up to that point because it's the um, 8th song on the album, or no, the 9th song is the second to last song, and I first heard it, I was like blown away. I was like, wow, like an almost 7-minute song that has like a ton of cool parts, great bass line, and a drum solo, and just like these screaming lyrics from Nilsson, and it's just was like I was just so impressed by it. And we'll get into that song a little bit more later, but like that one is probably my top 20 songs of all time. Like that's how much I love
Wow.
this song. Like it is, and it's because it's like there's no other song that I can compare it to. And sometimes with like when I think of my favorite songs of all time, they either have to be one or two things. They're super impressive on their own, and I've never heard anything like it, or it's got to evoke something in me. And this song kind of does both of those things, which is why I regard it so highly. Um, my least favorite is probably actually the last song on the album, "I'll Never Leave You." That said, I still think it's a very pretty song, and it is, I think, a decent way to close the album. And this is one of those albums, like "Automatic for the People," where like there's not even a bad song. But if I had to pick my least favorite, it's that one. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like this album's hard to pick a favorite because yeah, I guess if you were to analyze the songs for more of a okay, here's like the music, here's the lyrics. Maybe these songs aren't the most mind-blowing necessarily. It's more of how they pull off the songs and the performance. Um that being said, um there is one that I definitely do have a least favorite. And it's Let the Good Times Roll. And that being said, there's still plenty of great moments in that. But I feel like it's definitely kind of the most lightweight of the bunch. And I think it's like the least original of all of them too in terms of like performance and whatnot.
And it is one of the cover songs,
Yeah,
and it
one of
is
the
one of the
covers
covers.
too.
But unlike the other two, I will say I totally forgot to listen to the original of that one. So I don't know how it compares as opposed to the other two cover songs on this album. But it's just one of those songs where I feel like he probably didn't change it too much. Or even if he did, I feel like it's I don't know. The original I bet you is not much more interesting, like it's probably just one of those songs that's like probably fun to play and record, but yeah, I kind of agree with you that it doesn't seem as special as the other songs on the album for sure.
Yeah, it'd kind of just be like covering like Summertime Blues or like Blueberry Hill. Like they're classic songs and sure they're fun to cover, but you know, they're no one's about to, impress anyone with it necessarily.
But if you had to pick, can you pick a favorite? Or is it one of those albums where it's like,
I,
for the ones you like, they're just all about the same level of greatness?
okay, here. I cannot answer that. I'm sorry, I cannot. It is too painful. But I will say this though. I think a song that I like more than I probably should is Down. And the reason I say that is because, I mean, musically, Down is just kind of like maybe like one section that kind of has like a second part to it. But there's something about the energy that is so infectious. Like Jump Into the Fire, I get it. It's a total in the zone. It's a journey. But Down kind of does that too, but in a shortened version,
Yes,
condensed away.
I totally agree, and I do want to come back to Down because I had a lot to say about Down as well. But I think you kind of hit the mark on what another reason that this album is so special is because a lot of the songs are simple in concept. Like, okay, Gotta Get Up and Down both start with like piano. And at the very first like couple notes, you're like, oh, you kind of think you know where the song's gonna go. Like it's gonna be this kind of like not quite ragtime, but like it just doesn't sound like it's gonna be amazing. But like with Gotta Get Up, like he starts adding in instruments, like yeah, bass and drums, but then like and guitar, but then there's like a moment and Gotta Get Up where there's an accordion and like horns. And then Down is the same way. Like Down, once like the guitars and drums kick in, you're like, okay, the song's got a little bit of energy. And then his vocals, which is something else I'll get into as well, go crazy on that song. Like absolutely just impressive singing all around. And then again, the horns, he brings in horns that just really add a ton of like texture to the song. And you also have other songs like Early in the Morning where it's basically just him and
Electric
a
piano.
keyboard. Yeah. And that's it. And the chord progression is not that difficult, at least not from what I'm hearing. And then you have a song like Coconut where it's one chord the entire song.
Yup,
And yet
yup.
it's way more impressive than it sounds. Like he adds in so much right at the end of the song and that kind of changes like the tempo and like he really adds things to these songs that transform them into something that was just like a cool little idea to now like a memorable song. And the same thing can go for like Jumping to the Fire. Like, I'm pretty sure that's just like a 2 chord song, and yet
It's a
it
one chord
really,
song.
yeah, yeah, I couldn't really
It's
figure
it's
out
just
if it was
a,
two.
I think it's just a D chord and then a D sus4, the little hammer on thing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of these songs where composition, if you take it to the very basics, they're simple, but like he adds so much to these songs.
Yeah, because looking at the compositions, the most interesting songs that you would say that probably Without You is the best written song musically, but the other ones would be probably Gotta Get Up. It's a bunch of different major chords that modulate, and then probably I'll Never Leave You. But that being said, um, like a song like the Moonbeam song, it's acoustic and he's just singing pretty. There's a mellotron. I'm a sucker for those. Like that's a really kind of endearing song. Um, or Driving Along, that's actually one of the ones that is kind of most like an actual song because there's different sections. What I like about the instrumentation throughout the album, like you said, there's horns which come in, accordion, so kind of some oddities. I'll Never Leave You brings in predominantly strings, a lot more orchestral sounding. But what I like about Driving Along is it kind of gives me that Billy Joel vibe because some of those earlier Billy Joel records, he'll have piano and stuff, but then I'll have like this fat guitar come in. So it kind of reminded me of that, which I kind of like because it's kind of like the rock song. I mean, it's not really that rock. I feel like Down's a lot more rock, but
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know. I don't
and
know if
let
that makes sense to you.
no, I agree. I totally see the Joel reference. I hadn't really thought about that before, but now that you mention it, like when I think about Driving Along, there's like parts in the song that like okay, you have like the verse, but then you have I think it's what they consider the bridge where he starts singing Driving Along at 57,000 miles per hour. like the drums kind of, I don't know if it goes into double time, but the drums definitely like pick up a little bit more speed. And the way he's singing goes from like a normal singing until like a da 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 da, like a little faster. And that's something like Billy Joel would definitely do like in his songs, I feel like.
Yeah, and then not to mention the car noise in the beginning, which why can I not help but think of the ending of Moving Out with the car?
Oh yeah, of course. And yeah, Driving Along is one of the songs that I
It's kind of underrated. It seems a little underspoken compared to some of the grander moments on the album, but I think it's very important and I like it.
yeah, because I definitely just do want to start talking about these songs individually. And yeah, Driving Along, it's a good second song because it's yeah, not as impressive as the album opener Gotta Get Up, but it does really help move the album along. And it is one that
Really
it's
drives
really
along the album.
yeah, no pun intended, but it did grow on me because I think on first listen, there's no song really on first listen I disliked except maybe the last song. But I love them all now. And like, yeah, Driving Along is definitely one that has definitely grown on me. I just like kind of like the acoustic kind of feel at first. Um, and then you started talking about Moonbeam, the Moonbeam song, which
It's the
that one had to
other
kind of,
acoustic song.
yeah, but that one is, like you said, it's more kind of soft and gentle. And I will say, I've only heard two Harry Nilsson albums, even though we're praising this album. I do want to be honest and like,
We don't
I've
know much
only,
other Nilsson.
yeah, I know the album that came after this called Son of Schmilsson. And I listened to it because I was like, okay, that sounds like it's like a sequel to this album. And it kind of is. I don't like it not nearly as much as Nilsson Schmilsson, but there's a couple songs on it that album. I mean, all the songs are actually great, but there's a couple that are like really, really great. Specifically, Turn On Your Radio. That song is absolutely like beautiful and wonderful. But You're Breaking My Heart is like a really fun song. Take 54 is a fun song. But um
That's not the one I know from him. The other one I know is Aerial Ballet,
yeah, so it's funny. Tony and I, yeah, we both know one other Nielsen album and it's not the same one.
which is kind of hilarious.
But the point I was getting at was Moonbeam song. Once I heard Neil's the album after this, Son of Schmilsson, Moonbeam song is definitely like something I feel like he probably does on all his albums where he has one song where it's like really kind of like soft and pretty, but like also like a little what's the word? Like it's a little on the nose, like it knows it's being a little corny, if that makes sense.
A little self-aware.
Yeah, because like okay, with Without You, which we'll get to here in a minute. First of all, he didn't write that song, but like that song is like a ballad, but he goes full in. You know, like I feel like it's like this is a serious ballad. It sounds even more of a ballad than the original, in my opinion. And maybe that's just
Yeah.
because it's like piano heavy. But the Moonbeam song is like I said, it's a little like I don't know. It's like he's aware that it's a little slower and a little like you know of its time sounding, but like he does it so well.
Yeah,
And I don't even. You said what did you say is in the song?
a Mellotron.
And do
You
you
can
want
hear
to
it
because I
predominantly at the end.
and what is that? Is that a
So
is it like
okay,
a keyboard?
yes. So I'm gonna do the best I can to give this crude description of a Mellotron. So a Mellotron is like a keyboard that when you press the keys, it like plays an analog sample, like from a tape deck or something like that. The way I think about it is just the intro to Strawberry Fields Forever. That magical sound. That's a Mellotron.
Ah, got it.
And I definitely see what you're saying. I didn't really think about it too much about this song being kind of a little self-aware. And I think there's kind of two big things that drive that point home. One is where the song kind of progresses and kind of moves a little bit. He says a line, on a fence with bits of crap around its bottom, which kind of takes you a little off guard when you first hear the song. And then near the end, they do the music instrumentally, but they have him do this like floaty sound, but he's singing it in this real high falsetto, and it's a little bit comical just because you know how high pitch it is, and you know something that not to get too off topic, but something that blows my mind is that he never really did live performances. I've heard because of stage fright, but I feel like even putting these songs out with these super over the top falsettos that are fun and playful, I feel like that. I don't know. I feel like if I had stage fright, I don't think I could even release this. But of course, I'm glad he did, though.
Yeah. That is something that is like kind of a sad fact is that like he never really played these songs live. And like the one video, like when you look up Without You or like a live performance from him, it's like I think like a couple years before he passed away, and he's clearly doing a lip sync. Because I don't know if it was like for a radio show or like I think it was maybe for like a TV show.
Mm. I think I
And
know the video you're talking about.
yeah. And now that you're talking about his singing, because that's something I wanted to bring up. I think one of the other things about him that I think is super underrated, two things, and you kind of touched upon both of them with the lyrics to the Moonbeam song, is that he was super witty and like he had comical lyrics. Like even like okay, Coconut on this album. When you like go to Wikipedia, it considers it's considered a novelty song, like a joke song. And that's true. He's like he's playing like three different people in the song. He's like doing voices. And he's talking about putting a lime in a coconut. Like it doesn't make sense. But
It makes you feel better. He explains it in the song.
yeah, but it's like nonsense. It's nonsensical, but it's funny. But it's one of those songs where as the song keeps going on, he's like adding like it feels like loops. But he's like adding like percussion. He's like adding another guitar. He's like adding like piano. And there's like a lot of these songs on a lot of the lyrics on this album have like little funny bits, like Early in the Morning, which we'll get into that. I keep saying later. I'll get into it really quick right now, I guess. Early in the Morning is a cover of a song recorded by Louis Jordan, and it was originally like a kind of a blues song. And I heard the original, and I guess it was covered later by like James Brown, Chuck Berry, and I want to say maybe Ray Charles. And when I listen to the original, like yeah, it's a totally different sound. Like it's like a blues song with like guitar and drums. Where the Harry Nilsson version is just him and a keyboard, which makes it feel more intimate. But he changes some of the lyrics. Like the very first lyric in that song is in the original is I had a little date with my baby last night, but Harry changes it to had a little fight with my baby last night, which totally kind of changes like the tone of the song. And then later on, he talks about going to this like diner called Doobie Chase. And then the waitress tells him, you know, oh, you sure look beat. And in the original, it's like a different, the name of the restaurant is like different. And it doesn't include the line about Harry, you look beat, because obviously he added that into his version to make it fit with his name. And so like there's these little like lyric changes he does in some of the covers or his original songs that like are just kind of funny. And I will say his next album, Son of Schmilsson, which I might give you 1 month for our album series. But
Yeah, you should give me that, and I should give you the aerial ballet, the one I know. That'd be fun.
that would be fun. But there's a couple lines on his next album that are just really funny. And I won't give it away because I might end up giving you that album. But so the humor in his music I really enjoy. But then I also really enjoy his vocals. Like Early in the Morning is one of the best showcases for me for his vocals when it comes to like he can sing very like soft and like pretty. And he can like there's moments in the song where he has like a vibrato. And then like the part where he's singing as the waitress and he's like, Harry, you sure look beat. He like the way he like drags out, you sure look beat. I'm not gonna attempt to do it, but he does it in such a high like falsetto. and then he lets the note like kind of ring out, almost sounding like what, like an animal, like a monkey or something. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say like a monkey, but I kind of see what you're saying with that now.
Or he does like the like it's kind of like I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
his
I can't.
voice gets so it's like as he sings the line, he's progressively sounding more beat and worn when he can barely even sustain the note. But then of course, him being Harry Nilsson and being, amazing, he comes out of it strong and there's just these one of a kind deliveries all throughout this album. It's really spectacular. And the what kills me is that I mean I've heard some songs after this album, and I have heard an album before this album. Nothing comes close to the quality of songwriting, the consistency, the energy, and the vocals too. Nothing comes close to what's done on this record. This is like the most concentrated, condensed Harry Nilsson. It's all I need from him, really. I mean, it's a little bit of exaggeration, but
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I will say the one following this album is very strong. It has a couple weaker tracks, and other than a song or two, I wouldn't say the stronger moments on that album don't beat the stronger ones on this album. But like, yeah, I'm curious to listen to the rest of his catalog, because I do feel like, and I think a lot of people agree, like this is like the pinnacle of his work. I mean, it was at one point in 2006, Pitchfork named it as the 84th top album of all time for the 70s out of 100. Um, which I mean, maybe isn't that impressive because it's not like of all time; it's just of the 70s. But I would put this probably would make my top. I can see this making my top 50 albums of all time.
oh, easy for me. I mean, I know you do know a lot more albums than me, but I would say for me, I'd probably put it in. See, that's the thing. That's the thing. Is that when you have favorite albums, it doesn't necessarily mean this album is my favorite album. It's the best album ever. It's to me, this is an album that I can just connect to. I feel touched by it. I feel inspired. I just enjoy listening to it so much that this is easily top 20 for me.
Yeah,
Easily.
I could. It's hard because even though I don't have the range of probably a lot of other people, like I do stay in like certain genres more. And when I like an artist, I like to listen to everything they do, which is why it's weird I haven't given his catalog more of a listen. But that said, like, it's like, how do I put this album against like all of Tom Petty's albums or all of Bruce Springsteen or Pearl Jam? So that is kind of hard to do. And I always try to like do a top 20 albums of all time, and I can like sometimes come up with the albums, but it's always hard to like put them in order. But there's something about this album that feels special than even those albums by those other artists that I just named, because like it feels like when you listen to each song, it's like grabbing blindly from like a bag, and each time you grab another song, it's always like a banger. Like it's always like fantastic. Like you're talking about Down earlier. Like that's a song that also grew on me. Like I think on first listen, I like for some reason just didn't give it enough attention. But his vocals go so hard on that song.
Yeah,
Like
there's it's so hard to put into words. There's just something truly special about this album. It
it's weird because it's like he's like we talk about him having stage fright, so he didn't, like ever perform these songs live. But like it's like I wonder too if it was like when he recorded these songs, some of these vocal takes, if he just like knew like he wouldn't be able to recreate them live, because like some of them I just don't know how you'd be able to sing night after night, like Down, like he's just like screaming his head off, but
mhm.
not like in a way like a metal singer does where you can't understand the words. Like you can totally understand every word he's singing, but he's just doing it with so much passion, and it really adds to the song. Especially a song where Down is pretty simple. Like it's not a like 10 chord progression song, and other than the horns, like there's not a ton of flashy playing, but like his emotion and passion and the vocals I think really add to the song.
It's what kind of fascinates me here, and I'm just gonna say that this album, like the vocals are some of my favorite vocals ever. Like if he sounded a little bit more like this on his other records, he'd probably be one of my very favorite vocalists. But what I think is really cool is that his vocals kind of, I mean, I haven't really heard interviews of him, but it kind of just sounds like how his speaking voice would kind of sound. You know, when some people sing, they kind of put on a character. I mean, whether it's because, it's a rock song, we got to sound rock and cool. But it just feels very, very Nilsson. I don't know. Like, I know I don't know his stuff, so this is probably a gross statement to make, but like, I don't know. I mean, it's a picture of him on the cover with the funny title, Nilsson Schmilsson, and then this is just his songs, and it's such a personal record. At least I would like to think that.
But there's times too where like for example, like we were talking about Coconut, he's singing like in different voices. Let me get this straight, like that.
Yeah.
But then like take Without You, it's like a beautiful ballad, and he sings the verses so just like soft and intimate, and then during the chorus, he belts it. And he's hitting
Hmm.
notes that I don't think I can hit. They're impressive. So he can be impressive when he wants to be, but he doesn't have to do that every song. Like Gotta Get Up, his vocals is fantastic, but it's like not. It's like okay, like this is great, but then like Without You or Jumping to the Fire or Down, he's like going all out on the vocals. And I was gonna ask you because I've only heard the Badfinger version of Without You like once, and that was just like a couple days ago for this episode. And I much prefer the Harry Nilsson version. And there's also a version that Mariah Carey covered later on,
Which I
but
know a
she
lot of
did it.
people know that version.
Yeah, and she did it in the style of Harry Nilsson's cover with the piano as opposed to the original Badfinger version. And I just much prefer Harry Nilsson's over the other two because his vocals just, I think, add the most emotion to the song for me. I don't know if you think the same.
No, no, no. I totally agree too. I will say this that the Badfinger one. I mean, obviously, you give them props for writing the song because without them, there wouldn't be this version. But I definitely think that Harry was able to kind of see the song and then, um, it's a different delivery. For example, the chorus, "I can't live." It was done a lot more staccato like that on the Badfinger version. I can't give, like they do that. But Harry, he holds out these long, powerful notes and holds them out as as a belt. It's the dynamics to it. And I don't. There's just something about this album. Each song, including Without You, even though I do understand that Without You actually kind of stands out the most. It sounds the most like an actual song, I guess, in comparison. Um, but he just got everything right. He got everything right. The dynamics, the instrumentation, the harmonies, and there is a lot of like harmonies in the album, but they never feel out of place. His emotion always feels right. I just don't understand. Like I almost want to say this is one of those examples of lightning in a bottle, but it's not even. It's just words cannot describe this album. You just have to listen to it.
And I do want to really quickly use to talking about like the harmonies on Without You specifically. The second time he does the chorus and he sings "I Can't Live Without You." Um, First of all, the second time he does the chorus, there's no like the first time he does the chorus, he does that "I can't live living without you" like quietly, and then the second time he does it, he belts it. But the second chorus, he just goes right to that belting portion of the chorus, and there's like he's like double tracked on the chorus, and there's like one of the vocals where he's like I'm not even gonna attempt to do it, but he does this like a little kind of like walk down melody. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about on the word "lives," especially. He's like, "Can't live." Like I'm not even gonna attempt to do it, but like listen to that second chorus,
Yeah, I know what you're
and
talking about.
it's fantastic. And Mariah Carey actually does it on her version too. I noticed. But I just the Harry Nilsson one, like it's like you don't think he can top the way he sang the first chorus, but then he does.
It's the
It's
dynamics.
impressive.
They're
And then I mean I have to talk about Jumping to the Fire because this is my favorite.
And then I do
And
want to talk about one more song after as well.
oh yeah, Jumping to the Fire to me, I'm gonna say it's like a clear cut winner for me. But I mean, like I said, I love all these like Early in the Morning, Gotta Get Up, Down, Without You. Like I love all these other songs, but Jumping to the Fire. like I said, it's like 7 minutes. Begins with a bass line, which is just like, oh, it's like kind of a mix between like it's not funky, but it's not like hard rock, but it's I don't know how would you describe the bass line?
Um, I mean, I don't know. I guess I would just kind of call it. I mean, it's just kind of rock. Like, I mean, it's like old school rock. You know, it's not like classic rock, but it's
Yeah,
just
it's
a
like very
rock bass
70s
line.
rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like the drums come in and like the little guitar doing that little like what is that little I don't know what do you consider that?
What on the guitar?
The very beginning where it comes in and it's like doing like not tremolo,
Oh, like the hammer-ons and stuff.
the
Yeah.
hammer on things like that's
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
And then it comes in and just does like the like you're saying the D to D whatever, just like the chords
It's the
dun dun.
simplest little chord, kind of hook.
Yeah, and eventually pianos comes in and it's just playing like the same note, like the same like high dun 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 dun. And the lyrics are very simple. He's just like you can climb a mountain, you can swim
Swim
the
the sea.
seas, you can jump into the fire, but you never be free. I can shake you up, or I can bring you down. And so that's like the verse, and the chorus is just him yelling, "We can make each other happy." And then like this, after the song goes through that once, he just repeats the whole thing again. But like,
So
there's
lyrically,
the
it's the worst song on the album,
well,
is what you're
lyrically, it's like
saying.
the most simple, but no, but I love it because it's like it could be about like him and like someone in a relationship. Like, what's all this like back and forth arguing? Like you and I could just make each other happy, or you could like it could be like more of a global picture of like why are we mean to anyone ever in the world? Like we can make each other happy. So like every time he like sings it, it sounds like he's getting more angry and more like his yelling just gets like stronger. And throughout the whole song, is a delay that's on his vocals.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that too. That I think this song has probably the most vocal effects on it. I mean, delay is very common. I don't mean it like an oddity thing.
A little reverb, probably.
Yeah, delay and reverb and stuff. But it really works well, and I think that is also kind of a touch that separates it from the other songs. Is that it's produced more like you would do like a rock song like that.
Yeah, and it
It
just
still
go.
fits in that mixed bag of of bangers that you pull out as you
Yeah, and I
mentioned.
I read online that he said that like he was really wanting to do a song that was not like a song he did before, and he wanted to kind of change direction because he had done like previous to this album, he had done like a children's soundtrack.
The point.
The point, yeah, and he like just wanted to do something that was more like rock, like heavier, and like he was like, I'm really glad like we made the song work, and it's just like the song is like so simple, but like it always feels like it's building somehow until you get to the drum solo where everything cuts out, just the drums.
But
And it,
you're skipping an important part. To lead into the drum solo, you have the bass, and the bass is
oh yeah,
just
yeah, yeah. I
picking
know.
the notes out.
I was gonna mention that the bass player is literally tuning down his string as he's playing. Like that's something that like, and I think I even read today the bassist thought that that part was going to be cut out. Like they thought
Oh,
they were going to fade him out when he started doing that. But at the time, the song was still like, I guess, being written and stuff. And like Harry was like, no, like that sounds cool. And it does sound really cool. Like you don't think someone tuning their instrument during a song would sound cool. Like that sounds like something you do before a song, right? But like it works so well. Like, the bass just sounds like it's getting lower, and deeper sounding. Like it's fantastic. And yeah, it leads into like the drum solo, and like the drum solo is fantastic. It's simple at first, but then like it just sounds like they're adding more and more drums, and that they're changing the pattern slightly, and then they eventually start bringing in the bass and guitar again, like
like with an
subtly.
actual fade into,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is just
yeah.
an
The
extra
volume.
touch.
Yeah, it's a fantastic song. It's like a rocker, but it's like and like again, like the lyrics are simple, but it's a very cool mantra. Like just him yelling, "We can make each other happy," and he sounds so angry, and like the delay on the vocal, like I can't even put it into words. Just like how like happy it makes me, but then just how like impressed I am with like the whole song. Um, and yeah, it's my favorite. I will say, "Gotta Get Up" is a strong, probably second favorite for me. I don't know if that's the
Really?
one you were wanting to talk about. Um, And I will say two things I wanted to bring up about "Gotta Get Up." apparently he wrote that when he worked at a bank, and he was like kind of transitioning from like having to work at a job and transitioning from, I guess, his youth to like adult responsibilities. And then I guess the song also was like in the perspective of his parents. So I found that interesting. And then,
Mm,
as you
okay.
remember how the song ends, it ends with what is, I don't even know how you pronounce it. It's a, I don't know how you pronounce that. A late rock. It's
What?
it's where like it gets really. It's a. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's a glissando,
Glissando?
but there's a word before it which means,
Oh, I think I saw that on the
yeah.
Wikipedia
I
page too.
I'm very bad at pronouncing words. But it's where the song just like speeds up and speeds up, like it gets really really fast and then just like ends like chaotically. And that was because he originally wrote this song for that one album that you listened to, Aerial Ballet.
Oh, I didn't know
It
that.
was it
Okay.
was supposed to be on that album, and then it was supposed to be on the album after that called Harry,
Oh.
and it didn't make either album. And I think there's a demo version you can listen to like on the deluxe version of
Yeah.
this album,
I made that realization that that does sound more like the era of
which
aerial ballet.
I haven't heard that demo in a while, so I will listen to it later because I'm
And,
interested. But
and you can just tell from the vocals alone that something happened between the last album and this album because he made such a leap.
yeah, and I guess like the producer was just like they had to do so many takes of the song, they were getting like cabin fever, and like Harry wanted to include that ending bit where it gets fast because he wanted the listeners to know like the craziness that went on when trying to like record this version of the song for this album.
And and if the song talks about the transition to like a working life, gotta get up, like I love how there's a little bit of an urgency in the song, but it's in a unique way, like kind of like a pressure, like oh I gotta do this, gotta do that. That having that kind of crazy ending kind of really is fitting to the song.
Yeah, and then really quick, I've never seen the show. I think our parents watch it, so you'll have to ask them, or maybe you watched it with them. I don't know. There's a show on Netflix, an original show called Russian Doll, where
Don't know it.
I guess like the lead character like dies and then like returns to the same location every time that the character dies, like kind of like Groundhog's Day, where like the same day keeps happening. So every time like she wakes up, "Got to Get Up" is playing. I don't know if it's like on an alarm clock or a
Of
radio.
course.
So the song's used like a ton of times within the season of the show, and I guess like because of that, the song like spiked in popularity. The year of the show, which was in 2019. And I guess his estate let them use the song, but almost the whole budget for the music for the show went towards that song because they use it so many times because they got to pay for every time they use it.
Yeah.
And his estate said they could only use it a certain amount of times. Like his estate was like, okay, you can use our song, but like we don't want you playing it like 5 times every episode.
Wow, okay.
Which I understand. There's some estates that like I'm like the Beatles. Like for a while, you couldn't get Beatles on any soundtracks. You know, they weren't on Spotify for the longest time.
I don't know. I kind of feel like well, I mean, I guess the Beatles are a little different because they are like literally like the biggest band ever. Like kind of like how Neil Young, you can't listen to his music on streaming. And it's like I feel like at that point, you that artist does not have to worry about money ever again in their life. Why not just making music accessible for everyone? But
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I don't really know too much about that stuff.
So you want to talk about one more song, and I'm betting it's the last song on the album.
No, I do think that's a very beautiful track, but actually, what I actually want to talk about is kind of two songs, the bonus tracks, because there's two bonus tracks that are actually like not demos and not kind of like little fun tracks. There's two real songs, one of them being "Old Forgotten Soldier," which I believe is on Pussycat Dolls, his record, that one. Later on,
The
this is
one with
like
John Lennon.
yeah. And I much prefer. I think this demo is great, way better than the other one. But I haven't heard it in a while. Could be wrong. But then the track that I actually like more than that one is "How Can I Be Sure of You." Have you listened to either of those two?
Yeah, because when I bought the CD for this album for our grandmother after we watched the documentary, it came with, I think, the bonus songs on the CD. And I had them on my iPod for a while and I had heard them. So I've heard them multiple times before, but I have not since. And they were on Spotify last night, even though I know they're on like YouTube and probably like Apple Music. And I just didn't listen to them. And I didn't think you were going to either. So that's why I didn't as well. So I'm ashamed to say I don't know how they go off the top of my head.
Well,
Um,
I will say this, and I've
do they
listened to
fit the
these
album?
before. I would say so. And what I think is, I think How Can I Be Sure of You really does fit it, especially if, these songs got like the last little batch of overdubs added. What I think is interesting that those two songs actually could potentially have some of the best lyrics from this album. Um, just kind of a real brief look into them. Old Forgotten Soldier, the song starts off with the lines, I'm an old forgotten soldier, now that they put an end to the war, and I would like to tell my story, but no one wants to hear about the war. Which I think that's kind of done kind of with a little bit of a self-awareness as well. Just kind of interesting about that. Is like, oh, I'm in the war, but no one cares because no one cares about the war, blah, blah, blah. And then the one that I think is a little more fun, How Can I Be Sure of You? He's basically saying, oh, a friend of mine told me the sun's not really yellow, the sun is really red. And then in the second verse, he said, like, oh, the earth's not really like green, it's blue or something. Like something kind of silly, but I don't know. It's just real fun, kind of. I mean, maybe that kind of hangs on to the kind of the more children's approach of like the last record he did. But I don't know. I think those are some fun songs that I think you should definitely give a listen to. I think they hold up in quality, and I think if they were, fully pursued to be on this record, that they could, hold their weight compared to the others.
Yeah, I'll give them a listen for sure. Because like I said, I remember hearing them a long time ago when I first heard the album. And I remember too, isn't there like a Spanish version of Without You?
Yes, it's Spanish, but then of course for that second chorus they go back in just with the English version.
And I want to say too, like there's like a demo version of I think Moonbeam song and like Gotta Get
Yes.
Up to, which I'm curious now
And there's
how
one
those sound.
more song thing called Lamaze, which I don't even know how to describe
Or like
that.
an interlude.
Yeah, it's like kind of like a jokey instrumental, and there's like some probably like what like Italian they're speaking or something.
So basically, you and I both think this album is like pretty much perfect.
10 out of 10.
Uh, yeah, like even though like your least favorite, Let the Good Times Roll, like it's not your favorite, like it's fits the album, it's fun, and then my least favorite being the last song. It's still very pretty. It's got fantastic, strings and lyrics and vocals. Like there's not a bad song on this album. Even like the jokey coconut song is such a fun listen.
The quality is
Um,
there for it. The performances are fantastic.
yeah, lyrics are always fitting. The vocals are super impressive. Um, it's like such like it's like I wanted to say mixed bag, but usually when you say mixed bag, it's like oh some good songs, some bad, but it's like variety mixed bag.
It's
Like
like a
there's so
sampler
much.
plate.
Yeah, there's so many different songs like for everyone. Like some people might listen to this album and they might not like Jump into the Fire because it's so chaotic, or they might not like Without You because it's so kind of like ballady.
Ballad.
But like there's something for everyone, and yeah, it's one that when I don't know what I'm in the mood to listen for, it's one I usually go to.
It's a good reset.
Yeah, it's just it's got that great '70s production to it. Yeah, it's fantastic. So we recommend this album if any of our listeners have never heard it, definitely listen to it. Tony and I will definitely be checking out his other albums. We might like Tony's idea. We might do a month where we give each other the other Harry Nilsson album that we've heard before. That would be fun. And yeah, you have any last words, Tony, on this album?
Listen to it. It speaks for itself, really.
Yeah, it definitely should be more popular than it is. I mean, I know people know Coconut Without You and possibly Jump into the Fire because of the Goodfellas movie, but like every song is fantastic. The whole thing needs to be listened to front to back.
And I hate to say this because I know it's kind of a cop out and it it makes our argument for it being a great album kind of sound a little phony, but you have to hear it to understand. You have to listen to it front to back to understand the magic in it. And I get it. That's kind of just like a just trust me, it's a great album. But it's one of the there's something about it that is just you can't put words to.
Well, and I think your point too is like when we did our album appreciation for IMAX for the People, that's a more popular album, like Man on the Moon and um, Drive, and like the singles from that album were like on the radio more. And like at that point, REM was like as big as they were going to be, which was fairly big. After losing my religion, and um like that album more people have listened to, I feel like, than this album. And that's because Harry Nilsson as an artist is underrated. Like he's not like a household name.
I mean, I feel like the lack of touring probably did make some
But like
contribution to
people don't
that.
know that like One is originally his song. Like they think, oh, it's the Three Dark Night song, you know? So, or maybe people have heard Coconut covered by the Baja Men, like I originally did. We'll get into that another day. But yeah, so like I think you're right. Like people need to hear this album to believe how good it is, because they've possibly not. I will say lately I've seen online on the vinyl subreddit, people have been picking up this album more recently, which I think is great to see, because I think it's one that, like, if you like this style of music, kind of that 70s like singer songwriter rock, this is like an album, must own album. Like I'd be shocked if someone didn't like this album that likes that style of music.
Right, right. It's such a
So
likable album.
yeah, so I agree, Tony. Like give it a listen. Like if you do anything, if you take anything away from this episode, is to listen to this album. Now, before we go, I think it is time for us to quickly announce our album for album um, albums for this month, because those are going to be, I believe, the next two episodes you'll hear for this month. So the album I am giving Tony for this month is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' fourth studio album, Hard Promises. And Tony, what are you giving me for this month?
I'm giving you the Beach Boys 1965 release, Summer Days and Summer Nights.
Yes, so two very exciting albums for this month. So if you have not listened to either album, definitely go listen to them so you can prep yourself for the next two episodes for the month. But until then, we hope everyone takes care, and you'll be hearing from us soon. Bye-bye.